I'm Davitian. I work here at Common Good Vermont. I'd like to thank you all for being here. We're going to start our next panel. I also just need to say before you begin that we could not do this fantastic event or any of the work at Common Good Vermont without you and without our sponsors and underwriters, who include the Vermont Community Foundation, the A.D. Henderson Foundation, who has supported our work for many, many years, Action Circles, the Necrason Group, MMR, our three lobbying and public policy organizations that have supported this work, and we appreciate that. The Ben & Jerry's Foundation, the High Meadows Fund, Velco, the Fountain Fund, J.B. Kennedy Associates, and C. Russell DeBurlo. And you'll also see a little box here for the Con Hogan Award on the front of your page, a little orange box. And that's meant to raise your awareness about the Con Hogan Award. And of course, Con Hogan is known as the godfather of results-based accountability in Vermont and helping us to be more effective. So that is a great opportunity for you to nominate someone who you think is very strong in this area for the Con Hogan Award, which happens in the fall. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce and thank you both for being with us. Danielle, I have not met you until today. It's a pleasure. Danielle Lindley is with the Northwest Counseling and Support Services, and Amy Shollenberger is with Action Circles, and they're going to talk about their work in organizing around the issues of parent-child centers and the resources that they need to do their work. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody. We're in a nonprofit action day at the State House. So first, I just wanted to let you all know, in case you're wondering, that bell you're hearing is the call to the House chamber for the representatives. That's why the red light is flashing on the wall. It's not my phone. So just in case you were thinking I was terribly rude, it'll ring until they get enough reps in the chamber to do their work. So I wanted to just pick up on something that Tim Ash said about the budget and the $60 million gap. I just wanted to say to you, you all should revel today because you are now the 1%. All of you, you are that $60 million gap. I'm sure that every single one of your organizations is probably affected by some of the conversations that are happening up on the top floor of the State House right now as we're here. So I would encourage all of you to visit the House Appropriations Committee at some point today and listen to them. Senator Ash talked about Senator Kitchell, who, and I would agree with everything he said. She is amazing to watch and to listen to. I've learned so much about our state just listening to her talk about the budget. But the Senate doesn't have the budget yet, really. The House is where it's at, and the Appropriations Committee in the House is finishing the budget today and tomorrow. It will be on the House floor next week. So they're actually making their final decisions about what to cut and what to fund while you're here in the building today. So we're going to talk a little bit about our work at Action Circles with the Parent-Child Center Network. Action Circles is a consulting firm. We do political strategy for issues and people, and we were hired a few years ago by the Parent-Child Center Network because they had 20 years of level funding in real dollars. That's not 20 years of level funding in adjusted dollars. That's the actual amount in the budget was the same for 20 years. And so we wanted to do something about that. And what we're going to be talking about is how we approached coming to the legislature in a time of budget cuts to talk about what the Parent-Child Center Network does and also why that level funding is a problem and needs to be resolved.
So I can jump into that. I'm not sure if you're aware, there's 15 parent-child centers across the state. So when there are 15 centers and we have 8 core services that kind of make the framework of what a parent-child center is, when we're advocating, that can look very different in each community, and it can have different messages depending on who you're talking to. So what we realized is that obviously we've been level funded for 20 years, that what we were doing was not working. So we used a little of our own RBA and said, this is not working, no one is better off, both fiscally and our, there was a point in time where a few centers were actually considering whether they were going to close because funding was so bad. So what we did is we really looked at what are we hoping to accomplish. We knew that we needed a consistent message. We needed a consistent narrative about what our work was doing. We needed a framework, and we looked at RBA and how we could say that consistently these are the outcomes. This is how we know we're impacting Vermonters. And we didn't want to get swallowed up by that the blob that we talked about earlier, and that's real in healthcare. And so we knew that we needed to do something different. So we as a group really made the commitment to say that we're going to use resources, and we reached out to, I think it was 3 different companies, and looked at, here are the needs, what's the best match for us? And that's when we met Amy and her group, and we went with action circles. What we have found that has been really helpful in this process is that we have one point person out of 15 of us that does all of the communication with Amy. Because things move so quickly on a day-to-day basis that when we first started, it was a group and it was random, and that just was not effective. And so we have a key point person who's available for Amy at any time, so we can do, that person's responsible for triaging people, getting the message out to the rest of the parent-child center network. They're responsible for coordinating if someone needs to come in and testify. What has been really great is that Amy and her group have been able to get us on the agenda to testify. They've been able to say, this is coming up in 3 weeks, who's going to do this? It has really streamlined our communication. We also do weekly 30-minute briefing calls, which is extremely helpful because it allows us as a network to prioritize what is coming up and who's going to handle that versus in a chaotic manner. We also, like I said, Amy coordinates all of the testimony that we do and the emerging issues. It doesn't necessarily even have to be something that's on our priority list, but if there's a bill that she might see and she might say like, hey, this sounds like it could be associated with parent-child centers, it feels like something that you might have a vested interest in, she brings it to our attention, which has been extremely helpful. She's been great in setting up meetings with some of our state partners. She knows about the local resources, and so if she knows if there's something going on in a community, she'll take the proactive initiative and say, hey, have you heard about this? Who in your community is a champion of that? That's been extremely helpful. The one-pagers in our legislative platform has been phenomenal. This has really allowed us as a group to send a consistent message. I'm pretty sure that if you walked around the State House and you said PCCs are the answer, people will laugh. They might get upset, but they know about parent-child centers now. Amy has done a phenomenal job in linking our work into how it reduces cost in healthcare, has been able to link why our work is really beneficial from a population level, has really helped us streamline our work and then put it into an RBA format, which has been extremely helpful. So not only can we kind of talk the talk, but we can walk the walk and show that this is what our work is doing, and this is how it is impacting at a local level and a state level. So that's been extremely helpful.
I just want to mention there are some handouts over there that show exactly some of the things that we've done. And also I want to put in a plug. Part of the reason my team has been able to help our clients address the RBA question and create these great handouts is because we went to Common Good trainings and learned how to do it, and they were invaluable. I sent my whole team to the Common Good trainings, and that really helps us to work with our clients. So I would encourage you guys, some of them are online, I think you can watch them on a video, but I would really encourage you to take advantage of those trainings.
It might be worth, Amy, if you mentioned a little bit about the bill that was passed that helped kind of hold us accountable and work with state partners in moving some of that language forward.
Yep, so a few years ago, parent-child centers, one of the things I learned about parent-child centers as I started working with them is they are the answer, of course, to almost any question you have. But they're on the cutting edge. You know, parent-child centers were created 25-ish years ago in statute, and they were a cutting-edge innovation at that time for delivery of services to vulnerable families with young children. And what I've learned working with them is they're still on the cutting edge. When you look across the country at how services are delivered to families with young children, the work that we're doing in Vermont, like Senator Ash said, is really on the forefront. That's not just true for parent-child centers, it's true for some of your organizations too, but I happen to work with them, so I know about them. And so as we a couple of years ago, as that big child welfare question was coming up and there was a big bill being worked on, and there was an effort actually through Common Good to help groups like the Parent Child Center Network move to an RBA format to become more streamlined in how they work with their grants. We were working at that time with some folks in the Shumlin administration to move towards what's called a master grant. So we get, right now, Parent Child Center, they have all these different funding streams. You guys probably know this. You get like one grant from CDD and one grant from this group and one grant from the state, all different parts. And we wanted to streamline that. And we had language, we got help from some senators to put some language into S9 at the time, the child welfare bill, to say, hey, let's take a look at, can we put some of these grants together? And that started the ball rolling. Then the following year, we got similar language in the budget bill. Same senators helping us move that ball forward. We'd done some work. We didn't get all the way there. We got more language. This year, we have a master grant. And so it's been really great to come back to legislators who helped us do that, show them the result, not only the RBA results, but just the improvement of consistency of services, of efficiency in grant making and grant reporting, and also that statewide commitment to the RBA process has really helped us to continue the conversation with legislators as we move forward. So bringing those results back has really made a difference.
That helped us take 4 consistent funding mechanisms that each parent-child center had and roll that into one grant. And then I think that reduced our performance measures, because at that time it was 4 separate contracts. I want to say that we probably had roughly like 20 performance measures, and we were able to consolidate those into 9, which is huge. We still have some work to do on those, and I wouldn't say that they are, Mark Friedman would say that's RBA, but it's a step in the right direction. And so that's been really helpful. It's created an opportunity to have a lot of dialogue with our legislators and with state partners and let them know that we're in this together. A key piece is through this process, what I have found extremely helpful is that I was not always the person that wanted to reach out to legislators. It wasn't something that I felt comfortable with. And so this really gave me an opportunity, and Amy and her group provided a structure in letting me know how to do that. And so she would just send emails and say, hey, can you reach out to this person and say this? And I was like, no, that's not rocket science. I can do that. Okay. So it created opportunities to have those conversations. The second piece of that is that it helped us really shape what does a win look like. I think before, you get into a reactive place and saying, well, we didn't get the funding, so that's a loss. But what I can say is a huge win is that our legislators know us. They know about the work. And so you have to remember that it's small steps. And each year, you're going to continue the work. The work is never done. The third piece of that is that a local level, this has really supported our local parent-child center in strengthening relationships and getting buy-in from stakeholders, because I'm able to go in with a really clear message of this is what we do, this is how we partner, this is how we impact families. It's allowed us to create more of a continuum of a system of care, because I think at some points when you continually get cut or level funded, resources are lacking, and so you kind of get turfy. And this helped our community, and I think and some state partners really say there's a role for all of us here, so let's really define what that role looks like, and then we can make more progress together. And so I think that's been really helpful. Amy has supported us in holding legislative events and providing structure on that. We do, op-eds and letters to the editors in a very consistent way. So I think it's just having the structure and having the communication, which has been a real benefit. I feel very comfortable now going to a legislator or a state funder and saying this is what we need. And oftentimes you'll get asked, well, where does this need to be cut? I think Amy's been really helpful in saying that's not necessarily something I need to figure out. My job is to advocate, and here's what I'm doing, and I want to be a part of solution in figuring out how we can negotiate the budget, but I need to advocate for my services and the families that we serve. And I don't think if Amy and her group had not been, our action circles had not been involved with parent-child center, I wouldn't be able to do that. She's really given, I think, our network a lot of support around that, and we feel much more confident in advocating for our services and confident in realizing that we achieve really great outcomes, and that we need to continue to do that.
So can I just add one thing in here? Start to formulate some questions for our guests. One of the reasons that this seemed to be an important panel to bring forward is that in past years, we've talked a lot about how you can go and do this work by yourself and have an impact in the legislature. And really to have a case study here of working closely with a person that understands how things work in this building and to be a guide by your side has impact not just on your legislative agenda, but how you operate as a coalition and how you achieve collective impact. So this is, I think, kind of the anatomy of how to really get things done, but on multiple levels.
So I just wanted to add a few things at the end. I also just want to recognize there's a few other folks from the Parent-Child Center Network here. Can you guys raise your hand? I know there's a few over here. I don't know if I missed a few. So you can also talk to them. Amelia, put your hand up. If that they've also been involved in this effort. And you're going to hear from Jess Oskey in a minute, but I want to recognize Jess from the Krasen Group. Action Circles is one of several firms that works with folks like yourselves. We do it one way, everybody does it a different way. Everybody's going to give you value for your money if you're hiring a firm. So I always say it's really good to find a firm that's a good fit for you and make sure that the style of the firm is really going to match your organization or your coalition, because otherwise this is going to be frustrating. And I think that's really important, to get to know different folks and hear how different people do things. One of the handouts that's over there just shows an overview of how Action Circles approaches this kind of work. We always approach it as a campaign. We believe if you're trying to get something done, you should run a campaign for it. And a lot of people immediately, a lot of our clients are, I don't want to be involved in a campaign. It's like a dirty 4-letter word, only has more letters. And for me, a campaign is just organizing a way to say what you want and have an organized approach to getting what you want, and also having a structure so that you can be strategic. So when we develop a campaign and a campaign plan, a lot of that is so that when everybody is all slipping into reactive mode because something's happening, our question always is this a surprise? Because if it's not a surprise, we already know what we're supposed to do because we made a plan about it. And often, it's not a surprise. It's like right in the plan, week 7, so-and-so gets upset with so-and-so and threatens to do such and such, and here's our plan for how to deal with that. And it really helps to keep people focused and not just emotionally reacting to what's going on, because I always like to say this building is a building full of human beings. And if you want to learn about humanity and it's like all its richness, hang out in the State House, because it's all right here happening every moment of the day. But I want.
She's not talking about parent-child centers because we're not reactive. We never were.
It's true. It's true.
We never react to anything.
We never react. I wanted to touch on one thing that Danielle said, and that is really getting clear about what you're asking for. We call that writing your own happy ending. It's the first thing we do with our clients. And we went through this really painful exercise.
Not reactive.
This summer with parent-child centers. Honestly, I wasn't sure they were going to rehire us. Where we really push them to say, what is it that you really need? You know, you've been saying you don't have enough funding. You've been saying there's not enough funding. How much do you really need? And I think it was kind of painful for the directors to look at their budgets and really acknowledge how much they've been scrapping by for so long and what the effects of that are on the people who work at these places and do this important work. And it was also a big, scary number at the end, right? So we're in here asking for an increase of $8 million this year, in a year when you just heard Senator Ash say they're cutting, it's actually 70 million they're cutting, not 60. And that's, you know, it's not easy to do. I'll tell you, people tell me every day I'm crazy for saying that number out loud. But what I've come to realize is really important to say what you really need, because we're probably not going to get $8 million this year. Maybe we will, I don't know.
That would be great.
But we're gonna come back next year and say we still need $8 million. And if we came in and asked for $500,000 this year and then came back and said, well, we really need $8 million, that feels weird, because you're dealing with humans. And humans don't like it when you say one thing one moment and another thing another moment. And so we really try to approach it with, this is the truth, this is the end goal that we have, and we have a lot of compassion for how hard it is to do that, and we have a lot of respect for the people who do this work, and we don't think you're trying to undermine the work we do when you don't give us the $8 million, but we're going to keep saying we need $8 million because that's the truth.
And I think we got really positive feedback around that ask, and people saying we really appreciate that you're being very honest with the number, and then providing the logistics of how we got to that number. It was really enlightening, and yes, it wasn't, we'll give that to you, but it was real sincere appreciation around thank you for being honest, and we get it now. So it kind of thickened the narrative around the work that we're doing and what the true need is.
Are there questions for Amy or Danielle? Yes, Pixie, hi.
You brought up Con Hogan, and what Con's campaign was always, $1 you spend here is going to save you $10 down the line. Are you using that argument, and do you have facts to suggest that $1 invested in childcare?
You'll see over there, I shared one of the handouts. It's the orange one. We actually did a series of these. This is a case study from one of the parent-child centers. This one happens to be the Orange County Parent-Child Center. We did several of these, and we also have this handout, which shows our master grant and how the 8 core services relate to the population outcomes in statute. So we don't have a specific number. You spend $1, you save $7.60, which some organizations have because they've been able to spend the money to do that economic data. But we do have our case studies. So it tells the story of the person who came to the Parent-Child Center. These are real people with what they, and these are the people's own words. So Jenny told her own story and we transcribed it. We show what services the person got. And then we show, first, how does that relate to the population outcomes in statute and the indicators in our master grant. And then, based on data that's publicly available, we say, for instance, Jenny got off reach up. That costs $8,268 a year. Jenny got a high school diploma, which she claims she wouldn't have gotten if she hadn't come to the Parent-Child Center. So we show the differential in her potential earnings each year. Her child got high-quality child care, so we talk about what that can mean. So we do have some economic data, but it's not that easy like $1 spent, because this is messiness. These are very vulnerable people, and it's really hard to say, you spend $1 on Jenny, you've saved $7.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Linda?
Hi. So I'm interested in how much this costs, and in the parent-child arena, did each parent-child contribute to cover the cost?
We did.
And the handouts are excellent.
So we have these handouts. We'll hand them out after, so there's not a lot of paper.
We kind of looked at our budget, decided what was the investment that we were willing to make, and then had a long conversation around, as a collective group, do we need to contribute more? And that answer was yes, because we felt like it was worth it, and this is what we needed to do. And so we, as a coalition, decided that we would invest more dollars and contribute through each parent-child center. And we reevaluate that every year, so it's an ongoing process.
So just, because I know you want a dollar amount. It depends on who you hire. I would say the range for this kind, for firms, but some people hire one-person shops. My firm has several people, so we have a whole team. And it also depends on what level of services you're getting. I'd say it can range anywhere from $15,000 to $80,000 a year, depending on what you're trying to do and how much you're willing to put into it, as opposed to the firm doing all the work for you. And different firms work in different ways that way.
And you estimate it's a 1 to 5 year process?
It depends what you want. So if you're looking for money that's not currently in the budget, it's probably gonna take you at least 3 years to get it, and then you're gonna have to keep it. And so it could be like an ongoing thing, but at some point you may be able to do it by yourself once you have the baseline.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get a bill passed, I always tell folks, generally plan 3 to 5 year campaign, depending on the makeup of the house and how controversial your bill is and what you already have when we start. It's possible to do it faster, but sometimes faster is really slower. Because if you lose, then you have to wait and come back.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you so much to Amy and Danielle for joining us. Thank you.